All right, get ready, because today we're going deep, really deep into the world of Ted Bundy.
Yeah, Ted Bundy. I mean, everyone knows the name.
Oh, definitely.
But today, we're going way beyond just the headlines.
Yeah, we're going to try and get inside his head a little bit, figure out what made him tick.
You know, one of the most fascinating things about Bundy is just how normal he seemed. Like, if you talk to people who knew him, right?
Yeah.
They describe him as this charming, intelligent guy.
Yeah.
Really hard to reconcile that with, the monster we now know him as.
Oh, it's almost like he was living this completely double life.
Yeah.
So to unpack all this, we've got some pretty intense source material. We're working with excerpts from Ted Bundy info.
Okay.
And it really breaks down everything, his whole life.
Wow.
The crimes, his psychology, it tries to paint the whole picture.
The whole picture.
And then on top of that, we've got these images, right?
Okay.
And they just add this whole other layer of creepiness to it.
Like what kind of images?
We've got a shot of his rooming house in Salt Lake City,
Oh,
where, he was actually keeping souvenirs from his victims.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's our mission here?
Really, it's to unpack all of it.
Yeah.
Try to understand the man, the motivations,
Right.
the impact that he had on the world,
Yeah, that's a big one.
The big one. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
Bundy's childhood. Now, this was complicated, to say the least.
Complicated how?
Well, so he was born out of wedlock, and then he was raised believing that his grandparents were actually his parents.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
that kind of, deception, right.
Yeah.
At such a young age, that has to have some kind of psychological impact, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then you layer on top of that these stories of disturbing behavior even from when he was really little.
Oh, really? Like what?
Like casing knives around his sleeping aunt.
What?
When he was just a kid.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. And then there's this account from one of his neighbors, Sandy Holt. She claims that she saw Bundy torturing animals, even setting a cat on fire.
Oh, my God.
Now, whether or not that's true,
Yeah.
it just paints a very, very disturbing picture.
Totally.
So then when we look at his social life, right,
Right.
we have these kind of conflicting accounts. Bundy claimed that he was a loner, but then some of his classmates describe him as well-liked and popular.
Huh. So even early on, there's this discrepancy
Yeah,
between the image he's projecting and what might actually be going on underneath.
exactly. And we know that he was involved in some criminal activity, even as a teenager.
Okay, like what?
He was arrested for burglary and auto theft.
So it's like those early acts were almost like foreshadowing of
Right.
what was to come.
Absolutely. So then we get to his college years, right?
Okay.
And things get even more complex.
How so?
He seemingly transforms into this promising young man studying psychology,
Right.
volunteering at a suicide hotline,
Right.
working on political campaigns.
That's hard to believe, knowing what we know now.
Right. It's almost unbelievable
Yeah.
considering what we know was going on, kind of in the shadows.
Right, right.
And, during this time, he had a long-term girlfriend,
Okay.
Elizabeth Klipfer, and she had absolutely no idea about his crimes. In fact, she actually defended him to the police.
Wow. That just speaks to Bundy's ability to compartmentalize
Right.
and manipulate.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a master of deception,
Absolutely.
presenting this facade of normalcy while committing these horrific acts.
And you can see that pattern of deception in some of his other relationships, too, his sudden breakup with his fiancée, Diane Edwards,
Right.
which, some people think was potentially rooted in, a past rejection.
Oh, interesting.
Rejection was a major trigger for him.
Interesting.
Okay, so now let's get into, the really chilling stuff.
Right.
The killing spree in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. So starting in 1974, we see this terrifying escalation in his crimes. It began with this brutal attack on Karen Sparks, a UW student.
Right.
She suffered a severe beating and sexual assault that left her with permanent brain damage.
God, that's just awful.
Yeah, it's a horrific reminder of the level of brutality he was
Yeah.
capable of.
Yeah.
And just a short time later, Linda Ann Healy,
Right.
another UW student, vanished. Bundy later confessed to killing her and dismembering her body.
Oh, God. And then it was every month another young woman was disappearing.
It's terrifying.
Donna Gail Manson, Susan Elaine Raincourt, Roberta Kathleen Parks, Brenda Carroll Ball, all gone.
And the fear in the community just kept growing.
Right. And it seemed like the police had, nothing to go on.
Yeah. The victims shared similarities, young, attractive college students, often with long hair parted in the middle.
Hmm.
And, this created widespread panic,
Oh, for sure.
particularly among young women and those who hitchhiked.
And, like, adding to that terror was this complete lack of physical evidence.
Right. It's like he was a ghost.
Oh.
Made the investigation incredibly difficult.
And he was so brazen.
Oh, he was. Imagine this. He even returned to the scene of Jorgen Hawkins's disappearance to retrieve her belongings while the police were searching.
That's unbelievable. So how did things finally start to, like, unravel for him?
Well, the Lake Samish State Park abductions were a turning point.
Okay.
Bundy used this sailboat ruse to approach his victims in broad daylight.
Oh, wow.
And this time, there were witnesses.
So finally they had, like, a clearer picture of the suspect in his car.
Exactly. And then came the discovery of the victims' remains, both at Lake Sammamish and on Taylor Mountain.
So they finally had the physical evidence.
They did. And, we have an image here of his rooming house in Salt Lake City. And what's so chilling about it is you can see the fire escape he used to sneak in and out, and the windows to the utility room where he hid these, like, gruesome souvenirs from his murders.
Yeah, it really brings the horror home, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, you think you know a place, and then you realize something that awful happened there.
It's scary. And, unfortunately, his reign of terror didn't end there.
Right. His crimes would soon spread to other states, Utah, Colorado, and eventually Florida. But we'll delve into that in the next part of our deep dive. So we left off with Bundy, like, expanding his hunting ground. And his move to Salt Lake City in 1974, I mean, that really marked a dark turn, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It seems like the attacks in Utah were even bolder, like more frequent,
Right.
almost like his confidence was growing,
Right.
as if he, like, felt untouchable.
Yeah, and there's one case that really stands out to me. It's his attempt to abduct Carol Duranch.
Oh, right.
Posing as a police officer, he tries to lure her into his car. But thankfully, she fought back and escaped.
Oh, thank goodness. Her escape was huge for investigators.
Yeah.
I mean, during their struggle, Bundy's fake police badge fell off.
Right.
And he left behind a key that later unlocked the handcuffs used in previous attacks.
Wow. And then, on top of that, Bundy's long-term girlfriend, Elizabeth Klipfer,
Right.
she started to get really suspicious.
Yeah, she had noticed some things about him before.
Right. Like unsettling things.
But now she was, like, putting the pieces together.
Yeah, finally.
And, she contacted police multiple times, sharing her concerns, details about Bundy's behavior and belongings.
So her calls, combined with the evidence, like, really put Bundy in the spotlight.
It did.
It's just crazy to think about, how, like, sometimes even the smallest details can be crucial to solving a case.
Totally.
And remember, all of this was happening while he was maintaining this facade of a normal life.
It's mind-boggling.
Attending law school, working on political campaigns, dating multiple women.
I know. It's just the level of deception is chilling.
Absolutely.
And think about those victims in Utah.
Yeah.
Nancy Wilcox, Melissa Smith, Laura Ames.
Such young lives, just brutally cut short.
They were. And the details that Bundy later revealed about what he did to them after their deaths are truly horrific.
Yeah, it's just awful. Like, he kept some of his victims at his apartment.
I know.
And he would, like, treat them like possessions even after they were gone.
It's a complete lack of empathy,
Yeah.
It really points to, like, a truly disturbed psyche.
For sure. And the geographical reach of his crimes kept expanding.
It did.
From Utah, he moved on to Colorado and Idaho.
Leaving this trail of devastation across multiple states.
Absolutely. Now, Bundy's capture in August of 1975, that was a huge victory for law enforcement, right?
It was.
But it was just the beginning of a very long and twisted saga.
Yeah. The arrest itself was almost, like, mundane.
Really?
Yeah, just a routine traffic stop, suspicious vehicle.
Okay.
But what the officer found inside Bundy's Volkswagen, that was anything but ordinary.
Like what?
A ski mask, handcuffs, a crowbar, trash bags. It was essentially a toolkit for a serial killer.
Oh, my God. Talk about a nightmare scenario.
I know. And a deeper dive into his car revealed even more evidence.
What else did they find?
Hairs that matched victims. A guide to Colorado ski resorts, with a check mark next to the Wildwood Inn, where Karen Campbell had disappeared.
Wow. So it was a mountain of evidence.
It was. It finally connected him to those crimes.
Yeah.
But as we know, Bundy was incredibly manipulative.
Oh, for sure.
And a skilled escape artist.
Yeah.
He escaped custody, not once,
I know.
but twice.
They're crazy.
His first escape It was this daring leap from a courthouse window during a recess in his trial.
Wow.
He spent 6 days on the run in the mountains before being recaptured. But his second escape? Oh, that was even more audacious.
Yeah, he literally saw a hole in his cell ceiling, right?
He did. He slipped into the crawl space above, made his way to the roof, and just disappeared.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It does, doesn't it?
So where'd he go?
Straight to Florida.
Of course he did.
And there, he unleashed another wave of terror, culminating in those brutal attacks
Yeah.
at the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University.
Right.
And then the abduction and murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach.
It's unfathomable.
It is. And, you know, we have this image of this very ordinary hallway in the hotel where Karen Campbell disappeared.
Right.
It's this stark contrast,
Right.
between the everyday and these horrific acts that he committed.
Yeah. A chilling reminder that danger can really lurk anywhere.
It can.
So his capture in Florida, that finally ended his reign of terror.
It did.
But his story was far from over, wasn't it?
Not at all. The trials that followed, they became media sensations.
Oh, yeah.
Televised nationally, the public was captivated.
I can only imagine.
And Bundy, always wanting to be in control,
Right.
insisted on participating in his own defense.
Really?
Yeah, trying to manipulate the narrative, control the proceedings.
So it was almost like he was putting on a performance.
He was, playing the role of the innocent man wrongfully accused.
Wow. And it didn't stop there. Like during the penalty phase of his trial for the murder of Kimberly Leach,
Right.
he married Carol Ann Boone in the courtroom.
He did. It was a wild move.
Like, some people believe it was a ploy to gain sympathy from the jury.
Yeah, a desperate move from a desperate man.
But despite all his attempts to manipulate things, Bundy was found guilty and sentenced to death multiple times.
He was.
And it was during his time on death row
Right.
that he finally began to reveal the true extent of his crimes.
Yeah, he started confessing to dozens of murders.
Oh.
Really chilling detail.
Did his confessions, provide any closure for the families of his victims?
To some extent, I think they did. But they also revealed the depths of his depravity.
Oh, what did he say?
He talked about revisiting crime scenes,
God.
performing sexual acts on the bodies of his victims,
Oh.
even keeping some of their severed heads as trophies.
God, it's hard to even comprehend that level of darkness.
It is. And as we try to, delve into the psychology of Ted Bundy, we encounter a truly complex and disturbing picture.
So have experts been able to, pinpoint what was wrong with him?
They've considered various diagnoses.
Like what?
From bipolar disorder to multiple personality disorder. But the most likely explanation is antisocial personality disorder.
Okay, and what exactly does that mean? What are the hallmarks of this disorder?
Well, individuals with antisocial personality disorder often exhibit, superficial charm,
Okay.
a lack of empathy and remorse,
Right.
and a pattern of manipulative behavior. And they're often very good at blending in, appearing completely normal
Right.
while harboring these very dark impulses.
Which describes Bundy perfectly.
To a T.
So despite all the evidence against him,
Mm.
Bundy continued to, deflect blame, pointing fingers at external factors like alcohol, pornography, even violent media.
Right. He even suggested that his victims somehow, invited the abuse.
God, that's off.
A truly repulsive attempt to justify his actions.
Absolutely. It's a classic example of a sociopath just refusing to take responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
In Bundy's case, I don't know, it raises so many questions about the nature of evil and, the
Right.
challenges of understanding and preventing these kinds of horrific crimes.
It's a tough one.
It's a really heavy topic.
Yeah.
And one that deserves, continued exploration.
For sure.
But for now, we're going to take a break and come back to wrap up our deep dive into the mind of Ted Bundy.
Mm.
It's disturbing, isn't it? To think that someone could be so disconnected from the consequences of their actions.
It really is.
I mean, did Bundy actually believe what he was saying? Or was it all just a calculated act, even on death row?
It's a question that continues to baffle researchers. But this disconnect between actions and remorse, it's something we often see in individuals with those antisocial traits.
That makes sense. So, we've covered a lot of ground here. Bundy's background, the details of his crimes, those really haunting images. When you look at it all, what stands out to you as the most significant takeaway?
I think for me, it's that jarring contrast between Bundy's persona, the one he so carefully constructed,
Right.
and the horrific reality of his actions.
Yeah.
He was able to blend in so seamlessly, gain people's trust. He even worked in environments where he appeared to be helping others.
Right.
All the while he was harboring these incredibly dark impulses.
It's like a chilling reminder that evil can wear a mask of normalcy.
Exactly. And you can never really know what's going on beneath the surface with some people.
So true. What about you? What struck you most during this whole deep dive?
I think what I find most disturbing is that level of premeditation
Right.
and calculation in his crimes. This wasn't just about impulse. He planned his attacks meticulously, targeted very specific types of victims,
Right.
and then went to great lengths to cover his tracks.
Yeah, it speaks to a level of like control
Definitely.
and detachment. It's frightening.
It really is. And the fact that he was able to evade capture for so long, manipulate the legal system,
Right.
he even gained a following of supporters. It's almost unbelievable.
It really raises that ultimate question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Was Ted Bundy a product of his environment? Like a man twisted by childhood trauma, societal influences? Or was he, I don't know, just born evil?
Right. A true psychopath,
Yeah.
incapable of empathy.
It's a question that might never have a definitive answer, but I think by examining his case, all the evidence, the psychological profiles,
Yeah.
we can at least gain like a deeper understanding of the complexities of human behavior.
Absolutely. And the factors that can contribute to these kinds of horrific acts.
And hopefully through this understanding we can, move towards a future where these tragedies are less likely to occur.
That's the hope.
A future where we're, I don't know, more attuned to those warning signs,
Right.
more vigilant in protecting ourselves and others.
More dedicated to fostering empathy and compassion.
Absolutely. It's a goal worth striving for,
It is.
to learn from the darkness and work towards a brighter future.
For sure.
So we encourage all of you to continue exploring Ted Bundy's case and really just dive deeper into this fascinating,
Yeah.
though often disturbing,
Right.
world of criminal psychology.
Yeah, it's a field that forces us to confront the darkest parts of the human mind.
Right.
And really grapple with the question of what drives individuals to commit such unimaginable acts.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Okay.
But keep those questions coming. Keep seeking knowledge and keep exploring the world with a curious and critical mind. Thanks for joining us.